My name is John Passfield, and the title of this reading will be The Poetic Novel 1, Video 4, Richard G. Moulton. This is the book that I'm reading from. It's The Poetic Novel 1, Influences and Elements by John Passfield. It contains 15 chapters, each about a book which I feel contributed to my development of a form for the poetic novel of our time. So the topic of this reading is this book. This is Richard G. Moulton, Shakespeare as a Dramatic Artist. Okay, now, here's the essay. Here in my words first, and I'll quote from Moulton later. I first read Shakespeare as a Dramatic Artist by Richard G. Moulton in September 1967 when I was 22 years old. So I'm 77 now. That sounds like 55 years ago. Moulton shifted my interest from character and plot to character pattern. Until I read him, I did not realize how intricate a play could be, with Shakespeare as his only source of examples, nor that such a pattern could include the main character without focusing on the main character's personal quest as the point of the play. Of course, the main character's quest and values are a part of the vast idea web that the playwright is spinning, but for Moulton, the success or failure of the main character is not the main point. Moulton suggested to me that a play is not about the main character and his success or failure, but that it's about life itself, the patterns that life falls into when one takes a group of people and explores the patterns that their lives make when one applies a thematic measurement to their hopes, dreams, failures, and successes. What I originally saw as a story of Hamlet, Othello, Lear, or Macbeth, his hopes and dreams, fears and successes, now became a pattern in which all the characters and their plots, I would now say the thematically parallel and contrasting image arcs, conveys the speculative meaning of the play. Hamlet is still the tragedy of Hamlet, the character, of course, but what is the story or idea arc of the Hamlet group? Of Hamlet, Claudius, Laertes, Polonius, Gertrude, Ophelia, and all the characters in the play, in terms of the vast idea pattern which their presence and development in the play presents. So it's almost like a beehive where every bee is contributing to the total effect rather than one character, Hamlet, being the only one we notice, okay? And what of Hamlet and Fortinbras, Hamlet and Horatio, Hamlet and the Ghost, all in thematic parallels and thematic contrast? Moulton showed me that the vast spider web of ideas, the idea web of such a work of literature as Hamlet, is both intricate and vast at the same time. Now here's a quote from Moulton's book. The scene in which Bassanio makes a successful choice of the caskets is the dramatic center of the whole play, as being the point at which the complicating and resolving forces meet. The dramatic center is, according to Shakespeare's favorite custom, placed in the exact mechanical center of the drama, covering the middle of the middle act, so that you could see structure in a play. It was amazing to me. I thought it was just characters acting, living through actions, okay? Such passages caused me to think not so much of plot and character in a piece of literature, but of representative forces which compete for dominance in the world of the society, of the play, and in the minds of the characters. To think that the Merchant of Venice is Christian versus Jew, and to wonder whether Shakespeare was anti-Semitic or in sympathy with the plight of a minority in a society with a hostile majority is fine, but it leaves out a good deal of the play. The question to ask is, at what thematic level are all aspects of the play taken into account? This would have to take in the relationships of Christians to Christians, such as Antonio to Bassanio and vice versa, and of Jews to Jews, Jessica to Shylock and vice versa. So, what sort of standard is being applied to all human beings in the play? And in what ways does each character measure up or fail to measure up to that standard. That there are two big monolithic slabs of characters in the play, Christians and Jews, is a crude and simplistic way to explore the ideas of the play. What is a Christian? Which Christians are acting as Christians? What is a Jew? Which Jews are acting as Jews? What is a false Christian? What's a false Jew? Which characters represent distortions or perversions of their own faith? Or wider yet, distortions or perversions of a universal standard of behavior toward one's fellow human beings. Moulton taught me to keep working at the ideas of the play long after the most obvious ideas have been considered, and not so much laid aside, as all ideas are valid, but to look beyond the most obvious ideas to see how the intricate pattern of a Shakespeare play complicates, deepens, and broadens the ideas that spring immediately to mind on an earlier reading of a play. Okay, so here's another quotation from Moulton. An example of such character grouping is seen in the play Julius Caesar, where the four leading figures, all on the grandest scale, have the elements of their characters thrown into relief by comparison with one another. And the contrast stands out boldly when the four are reviewed in relation to one single idea. So you take a single idea and you look at as many as four characters in relation to that idea. But then you take another idea and look at those same four characters in relation to that idea. Okay, here's my comment from the book. Moulton suggests that a Shakespeare play is written in layers of meaning. It is possible to isolate various elements and to examine these elements in relation to one another in terms of thematic parallel, thematic contrast, and thematic parallel and contrast with a certain thematic measuring stick, a single idea in mind. But then it's possible to look at another layer of thematic interest in the same play and to see the spider web of meaning, the idea web, complicating itself. If the four male characters, Brutus, Cassius, Caesar, and Antony, are seen to yield thematic gold, what do we do with Casca? Does not his presence in the play, what he represents, what he does, and what happens to them, add to the complexity of the four male main characters? And what of Brutus's wife, Portia is what I meant to say. And what of Brutus's wife, Portia? So you just keep adding characters to this complex web, and you get a much more complex web, right? Change the topic and look at the same characters again. Okay, I have more that I have written here, but I'll move on. At this point, I'll stop reading my own words and simply read the quotations, which I selected from Moulton's book when I wrote this chapter of the Poetic novel. So in each case, I wrote a paragraph or a page about the quotations that so intrigued me at that time. So here's another Moulton quotation. No scheme will ever exhaust the wealth of design which reveals itself in a play by Shakespeare. So look for the design, the thematic design. Another quote, every line of the pattern runs parallel to some distant line. Further, so fundamental is the symmetry that we have only to shift the point of view and the parallelism becomes contrast. So shift your point of view, you'll see a whole new play in effect, but it'll be part of the larger play. Another quotation, Shakespeare has elevated the whole conception of plot from that of a mere unity of action to that of a harmony of design, binding together concurrent actions from which no degree of complexity was excluded. So you'll never touch bottom on a Shakespeare play because all you have to do is think about it from another point of view, another topic, and you'll see there's an awful lot more there. And here's the final paragraph in the chapter, which I wrote in response to the patches that I'd selected from Moulton's book. So this is me writing. So the Moulton message for me was that a play is more than the main character, more than the plot, and more than the first themes that one considers as one studies the play. There are no wasted characters or plots in Shakespeare, and serious literature, as written by any other writer, though it might not reach the height and breadth of Shakespeare's achievement, will be built up on a similar complexity, on the thematic patterns which are built up by the interaction of the ideas and their seemingly endless layers of meaning. So serious literature is based, it has character, plot, setting, and so on, and action, but it's based on ideas, complexity of ideas. Here's the conclusion that I wrote for this video. The subtitle of this book, the poetic novel, is Influences and Elements. Two of the influences on my work came from two very different writers, one from Una Ellis Fermer, the critic, the theorist, and one from T.S. Eliot, the poet. I was struck by the comment of Una Ellis Fermer that the greatest writers, she named Shakespeare and the Greek playwrights, had been able to do what very few other writers have been able to do. They created works of literary art which were, one, highly dramatic, by which she meant that they placed the contentions among a small group of people at the core of each particular play, and on the other hand, number two, they presented the breadth and scope of entire societies, and even of cosmic questions and concerns, as being present in the minds of the characters, and therefore in the minds of their audiences and their readers. So we have the dramatic, a small group of characters in a very intense struggle, and we have the epic, the vast sweep of all mankind over many centuries and even through the heavens. How do you get all that into the same little work of literary art? What I learned from T.S. Eliot's The Wasteland, with Una Ellis Fermer's concerns in mind, was that a writer could interlayer imagery from both elements of a story, from the highly personal and dramatic, and from the broad expanse of social and cosmic concerns inside the mind of the main character. So if you interlayer intense, personal, dramatic imagery in the mind of a main character, and you also interlayer broad, sweeping, epic, even cosmic imagery in the mind of that main character, your book will hold together because it's the same person doing this thinking. But it's a technique which you can use to unify these two extreme ways to present literature, extreme ways to look at life. So the origins of the various influences and elements of my novels are there for me to see, but perhaps not in an obvious way for anyone else who reads my books. So the book which is the topic of this chapter is, here it is, Shakespeare's Dramatic Artist by Richard Moulton. And that is to be found in an essay in my book, The Poetic Novel 1, Influences and Elements, which you can find on my website at johnpassfield.ca, johnpassfield.ca, for free. Just click on the icon and you can read the book. Thank you very much for watching this video.